A tragic turn in the search for a missing toddler, with the investigation spanning 2 states. 3-year-old Nola Dinkins is believed to be dead, police charging her mother and her mother's boyfriend with murder, just days after the mother herself reported the little girl missing. Newly released documents revealed disturbing details about what investigators found inside the home in the moment the mother allegedly confessed. I'm Kennedi Walker, and I'll walk you through the details. You're watching Law and Crime. A disturbing turn in a case that began with an Amber Alert. Now, Maryland State Police confirming 2 arrests in the disappearance of 3-year-old Nola Dinkins.
At this time, the Maryland State Police have arrested 2 individuals connected to the disappearance of the 3-year-old who was the subject of an Amber Alert in Delaware last night.
Nola's mother, Darrian Randle, and her boyfriend, Cedric Britton, are facing murder charges for the little girl's death. Police say Randle was the one who initially reported her daughter missing on June 10th. At first, Randle reportedly told New Castle County Police she had pulled over to comfort Nola after she became upset when an unknown white male with a gun approached the vehicle and kidnapped Nola. She claimed the suspect took off in a dark SUV driven by a white female. That report triggered an Amber Alert. The FBI and local agencies jumped into action, but the next day, everything changed. The kidnapping story, police say, was a lie.
Detectives determined that the initial account of the investigation, of the incident given by the mother, was false. The Amber Alert is now canceled, and there is no danger to the public.
That's when the investigation shifted from a search to a homicide case. Detectives zeroed in on the home Randle shared with Britton in Maryland. According to documents obtained by WBAL, troopers noticed multiple surveillance cameras outside. But when they reviewed the footage from the day of the alleged disappearance, they say the child was never seen on camera, only Randle. And inside the home, investigators noted the strong smell of bleach. In Britton's car, they found a child's blanket with a reddish-brown stain consistent with blood. Britton allegedly told authorities that he had gotten the blanket from a stranger. As pressure mounted, police say Randle eventually confessed. She allegedly told detectives the kidnapping story was made up and that she had hit her daughter roughly 15 to 20 times with a belt. Documents say Nola collapsed and became unresponsive. Randle said she called Britton and together they tried CPR. But when it failed, they placed Nola's body in Britton's vehicle and drove around for a while before returning home and putting the child in a suitcase. That suitcase, police say, was kept in the basement overnight before Randle asked Britton to get rid of it. When questioned by police, Britton drew a map of where he believed Randle may have disposed of the suitcase. Soon after, a body was found in a vacant lot in Maryland, not too far away from where police say Randle falsely claimed her daughter had been abducted.
Our homicide unit investigators had enough information gleaned through the investigation that connected these 2 individuals with the disappearance of this 3-year-old.
Now the 31-year-old mother is charged with first-degree murder, first-degree child abuse resulting in death of a minor under 13, and other related crimes. Her boyfriend, 44-year-old Cedric Britton, was charged with first-degree murder after the fact, failure to report child death, and other offenses. Police have confirmed the body is, quote, consistent with that of a child. So far, investigators have not revealed what exactly led up to the alleged abuse. And here to break down this story with me is Gene Rossi, a former federal prosecutor and criminal defense attorney with the law firm Carlton Fields. Gene, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. This case took a dramatic turn. It started with an Amber Alert and quickly turned into a homicide investigation. From a legal perspective, how unusual is that shift?
Well, I can give you a good example from several years ago. I think it was in the 90s or early 2000s. It was Susan Smith, and I believe it was Union County, South Carolina. And she called out an Amber Alert for her 2 kids, and she said that they were abducted by 1 or 2 black guys. So she threw out the race card, and then it turned out horribly that she got in her car, drove her car with the 2 kids into a lake, and let the kids drown in the car while it was sinking in the lake. And they figured this out about 2 weeks later when the stories that she was putting forward weren't adding up. And I think she eventually confessed, or her husband confessed, because he found out about it later. So is this unusual? Yes, in a sense, it doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened where people call in a false report. My kid has been abducted. I think it's Susan Smith threw out the race card. One or two black guys did it. And it was horrible. She went on the Today Show, repeated her lie in the Today Show. So this is not something that's never happened. And what disturbs me is both she and her boyfriend, Cedric, both knew it was a false police report. You get all the police responding to the Amber Alert. That takes up a lot of energy, time, and police resources. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars in overtime or regular time. And that, to me, it's not as bad as the first and second degree murder by any means. But the false police report charge, that one's a bad one too.
Absolutely. And like how you said, not just that, the public was also panicked, thinking that a child had been
Yeah,
abducted at gunpoint.
correct.
And also just with those police resources as well, a lot of cops could have been solving other crimes or been answering other calls of, actual true crimes, and then this happened. But just how does a false report like that impact the law enforcement resources and public
Oh,
safety?
okay. If I were to get on the phone now and call the police, the city of Alexandria, Virginia, and say that my wife of 40 years has been abducted, and in fact it was me. If I called the police, they would do all the alerts, all points bulletin. If I said that the person was driving a red Honda, they'd put out alerts for red Hondas. If I said it was a white guy, a black guy, Hispanic guy, they'd put in the description, and that would be sent out to the entire police force in the city of Alexandria and all of Northern Virginia, if not DC and Maryland. And how many officers would be affected by that? A lot. So they probably will print out a sheet, the officers who get this all points bulletin or the Amber Alert, and they're following this sheet, and they're going to probably a Home Depot parking lot, seeing a red Honda, and they're going to surveil that car to see who gets in it. It drags and exhausts police force energies and services, and that costs money and time, and it deflects from investigating true crime.
Absolutely. And we know that the mother, Darrian Randle, is now facing murder and child abuse charges. When the suspect is the parent, how does that shape the investigation?
Oh, first off, whenever you get an Amber Alert and somebody says my daughter has been abducted, you're going to respond to that Amber Alert, but you're also going to keep in the back of your head, okay, we got to look at the mother. Let's see what's going on there. And that's what happened here, because they probably could sense that the report didn't have those granular details that you would normally have in an Amber Alert or an abduction report. So they probably realized, I'm speculating here, after about 10 hours, they're realizing, hey, we better go back to Miss Randall and maybe Cedric, her boyfriend, and just ask a few more questions. And in this case, they were very lucky. They found what appears to be the remains of a 3-year-old girl, I guess in Newcastle County or Delaware. And of course, they live in
Right.
they live in Maryland.
Right. And
So
just the fact that it was 2 states, I mean, does that up the charges? Are we no longer talking about state charges? Is it now federal?
well, you could go to the feds if it were kidnapping resulting in murder. Um, I think this is going to stay as a state crime. I don't think the feds are going to get involved because
Okay. Okay.
if the body was found in Delaware, then you have to assume that you know the Nola was killed in Delaware. and they happen to travel to Maryland. I don't think the feds would take that kind of case, even if they had a statute to enforce. So this will probably stay in state court. But I want to just focus on your question, which was a great one. When do they start focusing on the parent? Well, it's always in the back of their head, and they always should interview the parent, and probably interview the parent 2 or 3 times after they gather more information. It's like when a husband calls, and we've had this on Law and Crime a lot, where a husband or wife will call the police and say, someone came in and killed my spouse, or my spouse has been abducted, and you find the body about 5 miles away in a burn pit. Um, that causes a problem. They're going to go back to the spouse and say, what's going on here? And any police officer will tell you, whenever there's a murder of a spouse or an abduction, they will follow up on the alleged criminals, but they always have in the back of their mind that the spouse may know about it, especially if there's friction in the family, a separation, or anything like that. This one's unique because, by her own admission, it appears to be a mother who just lost her cool and just beat her daughter to death out of anger, frustration. That's what appears to be the case here, allegedly. Allegedly.
Right. And it's just hard to really wrap your mind around that, right? To like lose your cool. And we're talking about a 3-year-old child. How bad or what type of behavior could they possibly be displaying to make you really snap? Allegedly, according to reports, according to documents, the mother allegedly told police that she beat Nola with a belt 15 to 20 times, and Nola lost consciousness. And so then she somehow fabricated this whole lie, and that's how the Amber Alert happened, and things of that nature. And so in cases like this, are text messages and search history, surveillance video,
Oh,
are they just as critical as the physical evidence?
absolutely. What the officers are going to do, either voluntarily or with a search warrant, they're going to obtain the cell phones of Cedric, the boyfriend, and also Miss Randle. They're definitely. I doubt that the 3-year-old had a cell phone. If the 3-year-old has a cell phone, then obviously you look at that. But I don't think. But those text messages, if they exist, people don't use email anymore. I still use email. I'm a dinosaur. If those text messages exist, um, then that could be a treasure trove of information that corroborates the charges. What I want to say here, though, is I'm curious. The Delaware officials have charged her and Cedric with murder one and murder two, but for him, they charge this accessory statute. And my view is, I doubt very seriously she did this on her own. I think she may have allegedly hit the child, which caused the death or the serious bodily injury. But at some point, I think this became a conspiracy, and it wasn't just accessory. Accessory after the fact is this. I'm at a gas station, and a bank robber comes up with his car. He just robbed the bank, and he says, "Hey, I just robbed the bank. Can I borrow $5 for gas?" And I'm so stupid, or I'm afraid, I give the guy $5. All right. Have I conspired to bank rob or commit bank robbery? No. But have I aided and abetted after the fact with the $5? Of course. Of course. And Cedric has been charged with, to me, is aiding and abetting after the fact, or accessory after the fact. I would like to know if he wasn't there at the beginning. Maybe he was in the room when she lost her cool, allegedly, and he helped put the child in the suitcase. We don't know that. What could be curious is, once they've been charged, who's going to go to the prosecutors first to get a better deal?
Yeah,
And
I was
if
just
I
about to ask you if you think
yeah,
that most likely, since they both were arrested, and usually in these cases we're trying to see who's gonna flip on who, if you think that he's going to flip on his
uh,
girlfriend and just put it
I've
all on
said
her.
this on shows before. When I was a prosecutor, I would try to get cooperators to flip like pancakes, and I would go after the most vulnerable, low-level pancakes because I want to work up. So I predict that the attorney for Cedric Britton uh, is going to do a beeline to that office if there's strong evidence. If they have weak evidence, then you fight. But if there's strong evidence that Cedric was involved, even as an accessory, I would go to the prosecutors tomorrow and try to work out a deal and say, listen, he'll plead guilty to A, B, and C. He'll cooperate, cut him a break on sentencing. Because the big fish here, obviously, allegedly, is the mother, Miss Randle.
Right. And he was charged with failing to report a death. That's something that we don't hear about every day. For those watching at home, how much trouble can you get in if you stay silent?
Well, there's a statute called misprision of a felony where you're aware of a crime and you take steps to help conceal it. That's misprision of felony. It could also be charged as accessory. So let me give you an example. I'm on my porch today and I'm having a cup of coffee. If it's after 5 p.m., it's a glass of wine. Okay. All right. Um, I like to add levity. We talked about levity before we started.
Right.
But let's just say it's noon and it's not 5 p.m. I'm sitting on my porch and somebody runs by and yells out to me, I just robbed the bank at Mount Vernon and East Monroe. And I just sit there and I go, thank you for sharing that with me. If that's all I do, I'm okay. I don't have a duty to call the cops. I don't. I don't have to. I can remain silent. But if I give him a map, hey, do you want me to help you get on way so you can get the heck out of here? Or, hey, the best way out of here is taking a left at Rosemont and going up Duke Street. If I do that, then I have injected myself into crime. But if I'm a potted plant or the person runs by, I don't do anything. I just finish my cup of coffee, preferably my glass of wine, and I do nothing. I would never be charged. I would never be charged.
Well, let's talk about the emotional weight of this case. And let's say
Sure.
this goes to trial. Do juries tend to respond differently when the victim is a toddler?
Oh boy. I got to tell you, there's nothing that inflames a jury more than when the victim is under, say, 14 or 13. Nothing inflames a jury more because juries probably have kids or they have nieces and nephews. There's nothing that 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 it's a prosecutor's dream when the victim, and this is not anything critical, but prosecutors have no problem prosecuting somebody who allegedly has taken the life of someone who's 3 years old. That kids elevate the emotional enthusiasm of a jury to find guilt. And when
Right. And
that
I'm sure
emotional
they're going to be showing pictures and the hair bows just it seems like it's going to be pretty hard for the defense. I mean, how do they even start to fight this?
that they uh it's going to be a tough case. It's going to be depending. Hey, it depends on the corroboration. If they have no DNA where the remains were found, where the child's remains were found, if they don't have any fingerprints, if they don't get any text messages, then her story that somebody was abducted could carry the day or raise a reasonable doubt. And you got to assume that Cedric's not going to cooperate. If Cedric cooperates, that changes it dramatically, because nothing's more powerful than the spouse, if you will. And Cedric is essentially considered a spouse because he's a boyfriend.
Hmm.
If he testifies against Miss Randle and adds more, you know, more facts to this narrative, it will be very difficult for the defense of Miss Randle. Very difficult.
Well, let's talk about intent. If prosecutors
Yes.
can't prove premeditation, could this technically get pled down to murder two, or how would that go? Or is it still considered first
Well,
degree murder just
murder
because of
one
everything?
is your classic. Murder one is I'm sitting at my desk now and I decide to murder, uh, a public official. And what's today? Friday the 13th. So I start my evil scheme on Friday the 13th of June. Okay. And I want to do this prime, say August. Um, I have 2 months to think about it. I have 2 months to contemplate, 2 months to plan. I also have 2 months to say, I'm not going to do it. The thing about premeditation is you have a lot of time to think about committing a crime. You also have a lot of time to say, you know what? I don't have it in me to do this. Okay. So that's why a charge of premeditation is so devastating in front of a jury, because you're thinking about it more. The crimes, when a prosecutor charges premeditation and there's just a couple hours or a few days before the crime is committed, premeditation is a lot harder. Even though academically you can premeditate in an hour, but it's just hard. People like when you have a husband killing a wife and vice versa, they like to hear that 8 months before the alleged murder, they took out a nice life insurance policy, the defendant, that jacked it up to $5 million. They had an affair with somebody else. There was thinking and thought in that. I don't know if they have this here. What you could have is you could have here um, an involuntary manslaughter case where you just hit the child very hard. You didn't intend to kill the child, but the injuries did take the child's life. That could be either involuntary manslaughter, negligent homicide, or it could be heat of passion too, which is voluntary manslaughter. You were so angry, you decided to take the child's life. So they
Well,
charged M1 and M2, first degree and second degree, but at trial they could ask for a lesser included instruction of voluntary, involuntary manslaughter, and then negligent homicide. That could happen. I do think the charge I like the best, I love the police report. I do. The
mhm.
false police report, to me, based on what I know, is a pretty strong, charge. That one's a
Absolutely,
strong
and
charge.
it seems like they could prove that pretty easily. But I just have
Yeah.
to ask before I let you go: what's the chances that this case could just end in a plea deal to avoid the emotional toll of a trial?
I think for Cedric, I'm speculating. For Cedric, he's going to call the prosecutors tomorrow. That's my view.
Hmm.
For her, it may take a few months to get her to realize a guilty plea will save you a lot of jail time. And I predict that she could plead to M2, murder two, or it could be a manslaughter charge. I don't know if it's going to be negligent homicide. Um, but those could be possibilities. It just depends on text messages, emails, social media, and all that. Other witnesses. We don't know yet whether she had this animus to her child. And I thought of this when I was reading the material. Is the child from Cedric or somebody else? I
Now
think,
they have different last names. I'm assuming it's from
yeah,
someone else.
this is possible. I'm just speculating. And I was going to say, my views are my own and it's not the law firm. Did she have an animus towards the blood father of the child, such that she wanted to take out her anger towards the father by hurting the child. You know, I'm so mad at him, and she took out her anger on the child. That could be possible. You'd have to talk to witnesses. You'd have to talk to the father and child. Were they having arguments about child support visitation? We don't know that. We don't know that.
Right. Well, this is definitely something that we will be following along closely. Maybe some of these theories will come out as more time goes by. But Gene, thank you so much for making the time to come on with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Darrian Randle is being held on a $1 million bond. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.